الله رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك وعلى آلك الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله في كتابه الكريم وقوله الحق وهو أصدق الصادقين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فما آمن لموسى إلا ذرية من قومه على خوف من فرعون وملئهم أن يفتنهم وَإِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ لَعَالٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَإِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. To bless our majlis with the barakah on these holy nights, let us recite salawat for Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. This verse that I recited is from Surah Yunus, verse number 83. And at this point in the verse or in the chapter, Allah describes, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that only a few people actually believed in the Holy Prophet Musa alayhi salam, despite the fact that he was able to defeat the magicians, despite the fact that he came with signs, despite the fact that he lived with the people for many years. Eventually only a few people actually believed in him. We will describe inshallah who these people are. Let us look at the historical context on these nights when we look at the fact that Imam Hussein also lived amongst people who should have recognized him for what he was really there for, and the fact that he came from a line of holy imams, holy prophets, whose job was to ensure the safe and continued knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the formation of strong aqeedah. He was not there to fight, he was not there to gain political power, he was there to make sure people understood their relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the historical context of this part of the verse in Surah Yunus is that the Prophet Musa alayhi salam was sent by Allah to live with the people, to be one of the people. Why? Because Fir'aun had made a particular part of the people that resided in Egypt and Misr to become almost like slaves, and they were the Banu Israel. The Banu Israel were the descendants of Yaqub alayhi salam. So they were descendants of the prophets through Ishaq and through Ibrahim alayhi salam. They originally lived in what is modern day Palestine, and they grew their families there and their ties and their towns. But eventually some of the hardships that came down in that area meant that they went somewhere where there was food more readily available. Because the Nile was in Egypt, it was a fertile area and a fertile land over there. Some of the Banu Israel, some of the descendants of Ishaq decided to move towards Egypt. Egypt was the land of the pharaohs. In the beginning, the pharaohs weren't as powerful as they used to be, so they welcomed the Banu Israel. They were not so strict with them, they welcomed them, even though they were small in number. But as they became larger and larger in number, especially the Banu Israel began to marry from those Egyptians there. They used to marry from the other nations and the other religions that were already there. So whether I was a Banu Israel, a male, I would marry a female from there, or if I was a female descendant of the Banu Israel, I would marry someone else. It wasn't a problem, it wasn't seen as an issue. So they settled the land, they began to multiply in numbers. The Pharaoh that is mentioned in the Quran, because Pharaoh is more than one. There were several pharaohs. Anybody who's studied history knows that they ruled for hundreds of years, in fact. Several pharaohs known by many titles, buried in different places. Some of them, the reign was very long, some were quite successful in how they managed to hold on to authority, some were less successful. And so the Pharaoh that is mentioned here, which some scientists say it is referring to Ramesses II, it is possible, but we cannot be 100% sure that it is him. The Pharaoh that is mentioned here was very, very harsh in dealing with people. When we look at what some of the ulama of tafsir say about this verse, they say that this Pharaoh that is mentioned here actually wasn't destined to be the Pharaoh. He was actually an outsider from the family, and he was treated very harshly by his own family. They treated him as if he was a slave himself. But through the design of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of the people that were earlier or higher rank than him and were supposed to be in line to the throne passed away. There was fighting between some of the brothers, they were killed. Eventually, through some designs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this person became the Pharaoh. Now somebody who doesn't have anything, someone who lives on crumbs, someone who struggles in his life, when you give him everything, sometimes they decide to go in excess. For example, if you give somebody who's just a learner driver, and you give him a high-powered car, you give him a 4-liter engine, you give him the best car possible, what is the most likely outcome? And you put him on the road, what is the most likely outcome? Accident. Because he's not ready for that. And you give him too much, you give him excess. He does not need or should not have that at the moment. Similar thing happened with Pharaoh. He wasn't meant to be the Pharaoh because as soon as he received this power and authority, he had an accident. He started killing people, he started doing wrong things, he started enslaving the people. He became someone whose heart was filled with hatred, as if he wanted to take revenge against the society. And this is likewise what happened with Yazid. Yazid himself was a nobody. Him and his father and his grandfather were outcasts. They were the talaqa, they were the ones that were freed by the Prophet. When the Prophet entered Mecca, when the Muslims opened Mecca in the year 8 Hijri, they entered and they were victorious without fighting. They took the city of Medina in peace, the city of Mecca in peace. And the Prophet sat and all these men came to him, the ones that had been fighting him for years, the ones who spent all their energy and time plotting against the Prophet, the ones who tried to murder him while he was in Mecca, they came and sat before him. And the Prophet said to them, what shall I do with you? They said, we've heard what the story of Yusuf is. We are like the brothers of Yusuf. He said, in that case, then go, you're free. I won't do anything to you. Yusuf was good to his brothers, likewise. I will be good to you. Go, you are free. So that was Abu Sufyan and his son Muawiyah and his grandson Yazid. They were outcast from society. And when someone like Yazid or someone like Muawiyah takes power, what does he do? He acts like Pharaoh. He takes revenge. He does excess. And he deliberately goes out to kill and take vengeance on the people, as if it was the people's fault that he was an outcast from society. So this is the description of the events of that time. That Pharaoh, when he reached authority and power, decided to become very, very harsh with the people. And because the Banu Israel were growing in number, and the Banu Israel did have a religion, there was an organized religion. At that time, yes, it had become corrupted, yes, some of the laws were lost, yes, some of the teachings were lost, but they still believed in a God. They still had organized religion. They did not believe in the pharaohs. Their allegiance was not to the pharaohs. Now this brings an important side discussion here. The issue of nationality. Has Islam addressed the issue of nationality or not? The simple answer to this is, you can be free to be as proud of you want as your nationality, as your country, as your background, heritage. There is no problem in this. In some cases, Islam respects this and supports this. However, never at any one time is it acceptable, if there is a clash between religion and nationality, for you to favor your nationality over your religion. So for you to do something, when there is a conflict between, shall I do this, but actually Islam doesn't allow this, but actually my country needs me to do so and so. When there is a clash, never support nationalism over Islam. This is the only time when nationalism is looked at in a negative view. Apart from that, you're free to carry your country's flag, to support your country, to be proud of where you are from. Absolutely no problem at all. But never let one take over precedence on the other if it is against Islam. So back to this point, the Banu Israel were growing in number and they did not have allegiance to the pharaohs. This pharaoh, when he came to power, he decided to subjugate the Banu Israel. One of the things that he did was he enforced slave labor. So they took the Banu Israel, before they were free men, they were merchants, they used to live amongst the people, and they put them in camps and made them laborers. They were forced to work. Some of what you see in Egypt, these pyramids and so on, were done by slave labor. They were created by slave labor. So that was one. Number two, anybody who he saw being rebellious, did not take kindly to his authority, they were executed immediately. So that spread fear. So number one, you take all these people out of their jobs, you take their economic value out, and you subjugate them. So they can't support themselves, they're reliant on the state now. That's number one. Number two, anyone who challenges you is killed. Number three, this pharaoh, when he came to power, he was told by some of the scholars of his court that there will be born. They had read the signs, they had read the previous scrolls and scriptures that said there would be a prophet in this land at the time when a pharaoh would become very harsh in dealing with the people. They said to him, we have seen the signs and the way things are going, we think it's going to happen in your lifetime. There will be somebody born in this very city of ours who will lead a revolution against you. He will cause you to die, and the people will not worship you as a god as you see yourself. And so what did Fir'aun decide to do? He said, what is the description of this man? They said, it is likely he is not born yet. So there is a chance he has not been born yet. So Fir'aun put a plan into action to kill any male child. If the woman was pregnant, they would stop her pregnancy. They would deliberately hit her so that she would miscarry and the child would die. If she had just given birth, they would look at the child. If he was male, he was killed. So this is number 3 now. Look at the excess going around killing children. This continued for several years, brothers and sisters. It didn't happen just for a few months. Several years, this was happening to them. So this is the third part. Number 4, he decided to ban any practice of the Jewish religion. So at any time, if anybody said, we are practicing the religion of Banu Israel, we are practicing what Dawood taught us, we are practicing what Ishaq and Yaqub and the previous prophets taught us, this was banned. So they began to become weaker. Their numbers began to decrease from murder, some of them began to fall ill, they could not feed themselves, and their situation became very difficult. Again, look at the analysis of this position. So now something bad has happened to me, society has subjugated me, done something bad. If I get power, as unfortunately the Banu Israel have in the modern times, I become full of hate against the society. I decide to do bad to somebody else. Because now I have power, I remember when I did not have power, I decide to become evil to someone else. I subjugate them and I treat them bad. Because I was treated bad, I want them to feel it as well. So I take their land, I occupy their lands, I decide to kill their men and women, I bombard them from the skies, and this is what is happening. Inshallah, everyone understands. In modern day times, this is exactly what is happening. So even though those people should have known better than Fir'aun, they decide in the modern days to act like Fir'aun. So Musa alayhi salam, the holy prophet, was sent by Allah to these people to save them from what Fir'aun was doing to them. Now how? If Allah sends a man from outside the city, sends him in with an army, it's not going to work. If he sends a foreign prophet, they're going to say, well, he's not one of us, why should we follow him? If he lets him be born in the ordinary way, and he goes up and starts teaching, Fir'aun would have killed him. So there needed to be a plan to make sure that the prophet could live and gain experience and reach that age when his mission could begin without threatening his life. So what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decide to do? He decided to make sure that Musa's mother alayhi salam gave birth secretly, and the angels informed her that if you want your son to be alive, put him in the basket and let him go in the river. She said, I've just given birth to this child. The angels replied, if you take him back with you, he will be found and killed. This is the only way to save him. The baby is put in a basket. The basket carries him in the water. Where's the plan of Allah going? It goes towards the palace of Fir'aun. He has built himself internal rivers and lakes in his palace that come from the river Nile. And at that moment that his wife Asya is out there looking at the river, looking at the gardens, she's walking there, she dreams of having a good child. What comes before her? A basket with a baby inside. So Asya goes, looks at this child, newly born. How is this possible? Which mother would have the heart to let this child go? She brings him back inside, informs her husband. Her husband is unsure. This is a male child. According to his rules, male children should be killed. But hold on a second, this child has come to me. I can raise him my way. He will not be a danger. In that case, there is no problem in keeping this child. And so Fir'aun and his wife Asya decide to raise this child. Allah's plan is now to keep the Prophet in the household of Fir'aun. The only place he would be safe, the only place that the Prophet would not be killed and still be able to live in the city is in the palace of Fir'aun. And so there he grows up. And while he's there, he looks at what Fir'aun does. He understands his practices. So that when he comes and speaks against him, he can say, I'm an insider. I have seen exactly what you do. Exactly like the situation of the Prophet. He was one of the Quraysh. He lived there, he grew up amongst them, he saw what they lived like. He saw how they behaved, he saw what their religion was. So when he said, I believe in Allah, the only God, he said, because I know what else is out there. I'm not confused, I'm well aware of what the religion is. Your religion of idolatry is false. And I have seen it properly, I understand it. And the same thing that Musa ﷺ did with Pharaoh. He said at the time that his prophethood began, he said, I have seen what you do with the people. You claim you are a Lord, you are not a God. I have seen you eat, I have seen you sleep, I have seen you fall ill, I have seen you bleed. You cannot be a Lord and a God. I have seen these with my eyes. And this is why Pharaoh was full of hatred against Musa. Because the years that he'd raised him, he turned out to be the child that was of the prophecy, the one that would lead a revolution against him. And so Pharaoh decided to be very, very harsh with the Banu Israel, even more so than before. He wanted to make sure that the Prophet Musa ﷺ had no way of starting his revolution. So he could not do anything to Musa ﷺ himself. He knew he was protected by Allah. But he decided to attack his followers severely. And there is an incident that we know. Musa ﷺ saw one of the Banu Israel being attacked by a non-follower of Banu Israel. He decided to save that man's life. As he was defending that man's life, the attacker was killed. By an accident, he was killed. And then Pharaoh used this to say, now we have a case against Musa. Musa is a murderer. Take him, bring him, let's execute him. And Musa ﷺ had no way but to leave the city. And so he left. And he was worried that the situation would worsen when he wasn't there. His people would suffer even more. And then after a few years, inshallah, we'll get another chance to look at his story. He comes back into the city and he brings back with him the full set of laws and obligations that Allah has guided the people towards. And he says, this is the religion now. I have been given this from Allah. He's challenged by some of Pharaoh's men, the magicians and so on. And Musa ﷺ is able to defeat them. At this point, Pharaoh has reached the peak of what he is claiming to be. I am the highest Lord. I am able to kill. I am able to do whatever I want, bring life and end life. And this is when the Quran says, at this point, فَمَا آمَنَ مُوسَى إِلَّا فَمَا آمَنَ لِمُوسَى إِلَّا ذُرِّيَّةٌ مِّن قَوْمِهِ. Only a small group from the people of Musa followed him. The small group, what did they consist of? The ulama of tafsir say it was mainly the poor people. The religious people tended to be the poorer ones. The ones that have money, their affiliation to religion is slightly weaker. This is something general. It's not applicable in every single case, but alhamdulillah, all of us have experienced in life. It is generally the law. When we look around, we see that the poorer people have stronger faith in religion. The people that get money, unfortunately, slowly, they start to lose their focus on religion. Why? Because the poor person knows that at the end of the day, everything goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But sometimes the person with money thinks that it is he that controls things. I can affect this, I can do that. Alhamdulillah, I've got some money now, I can make more. And it's down to me. I'm successful, I'm smart, I'm a great businessman, I'm a great trader. I know exactly what I'm doing. Yes, people trust me with your money. I know exactly how to make more of this. I know how to be successful. So their attitude starts to become more focused on themselves. Number one. Number two, time. The amount of time they dedicate to Allah starts to decrease. Because the person who has £1, all he has to worry about £1. It's not a big deal. He knows exactly where it is, how to keep it, how to spend it, how to make £1 again. But the person with £1 million, he's worrying about £1,001 now. Yes? So the person who's worried about the £1 is only thinking about that £1. The person with £1,001 is thinking about every single one of them. And sometimes you see the person with the £1 being more generous than the person with $1 million. Yes, we've seen it. He'll give the £1, it's not a problem to him, even though it's the only thing he owns. But the person with $1 million, that £1 he won't give, even though he has 999 others, 999,000 others. Yes? He worries about that £1. Now, because he's worrying about these £1,001, his energy is going towards this. He forgets his salah sometimes. He forgets to do the dua. He forgets to do other ibadah. He doesn't have time to come to the Imam Barga, to the Markaz, to the center. Oh, brother, I'm sorry, I don't have time for ziyarah this year. You know, the shop is very busy. And you know, these properties that I have, the customers are giving me a headache. And so on and so forth. Whereas the poor person with less money, he knows when it is the time to give attention to Allah. This is the general rule, of course. It does not apply to every single case. But this is exactly what the Quran is describing in the case of Musa alayhi salam. That only a small group of Banu Israel, of his group of people, followed him. The rest of his people did not follow. Why they did not follow? Well, number one, because they had money, they had connections, they had ties, and because of that they saw, well, going with Musa means we're going to lose mostly our livelihood, probably our lives, and definitely we're going to get into a big hassle. Every day we're going to have to defend ourselves. So in this case, let Musa do what he wants. If Musa wins, we'll say we're with you. We're your cousins, we're your family, we're descendants of the Banu Israel, we're with you. If he doesn't win, we haven't lost anything, and Fir'aun is going to be okay with us. See, they're making a deal. They're putting their religion into a deal. It's a bet. If Musa wins, he's one of, we're one of him, and he can be good to us. He's a prophet, he has to accept us. If Fir'aun wins, we haven't done anything against Fir'aun to make him unhappy, no problem, he'll accept us. Brothers, Imam Hussein did not do this. He could have. Imam Hussein could have made a similar deal. He said, you know what, Yazid, no problem. Right now, I won't start a revolution. If the people join me and I see their armies and everything else, yes, maybe I'll join the people. If not, I haven't done anything to upset Yazid, I'll be fine in Medina. No, not at all. Imam Hussein comes out and he says, Wallah, la a'tikum biyadi a'ta' al-dalil, wa la ufirru firar al-habid. Wallah, I won't give you my hand in a way that the slave gives you his hand. Ashamed and scared and belittled. Nor will I run away like those who are in fear. Run away from you guys. I won't do that. Neither of them. I will stand firm. I will make the decision. I will tell you what is going to happen, not you tell me what to do. So this is unfortunately the trade that some people make. Should I stand firm in faith, or should I look for an easy way out? And the Quran is describing that the people of Musa, the majority of them, took the easy way out. Why? Because إِلَّا ذُرِّيَّةٌ مِّن قَوْمِهِ عَلَى خَوْفٍ مِّن فِرْعَوْنَ وَمَلَئِهِمْ أَنْ يَفْتِنَهُمْ. They were out, they were only a small number that believed, because the rest did not believe out of fear of Fir'aun. Fir'aun and his group of people. Why? Because Fir'aun himself, the Quran describes in the later part of the verse, what kind of character, and because the tests and trials that they would be put to. So number one, they were afraid of the trials. What kind of trials? Inshallah, some of the brothers in here, they have their children with them. If I said I'm going to kill you unless you don't believe in Allah, most likely, inshallah, the brother will say, no, I'll keep my religion, kill me. But what if I say I'm going to bring your sons, those young sons that you carry with you, and I'm going to kill them in front of your eyes. I'm going to torture them. It's a bit more difficult, huh? It's now challenging. You have to think twice. Yes or no, do I want to see my children hurt? You start to think. If it's about me personally, not a problem. Here's a trial, that's a test. Other test, what if I say I'm going to torture you, not kill you, but torture you? 1 day, 2 days, 5 days. Bilal would be out in the desert, under the sun, and they would bring a large stone, larger than what 10 men could carry, and roll it on his body. The stone would be burning hot, he would be under the sun, its weight is more than what 10 men could carry, and they said, all you have to say is, yes, I believe in the idols. He says, la, wahidun ahad, only one. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Only one. He would just say, only one, only one. And they would repeat the torture day after day after day. But he would not give in. Al-Khabbab ibn al-Irat, another one of the companions. They would put him on some branches and light a fire underneath him. The branches were flexible. So when Khabbab became unconscious out of the pain of the torture, his body would slump, fall in the fire would burn him. And then he'd wake up again and the same thing would happen. So he's trying to strain away from the fire, but as soon as he becomes so tired, so exhausted out of the torture, and he slouches, the fire burns him and he has to stand up again. You see, look at this creativeness in the torture. How many days did Khabbab be burnt like this? The torture continued for weeks, the narration said. Weeks. And the same thing, he would say, Wahidun ahad. Only one. I cannot believe in more than one. There is only one. They were tortured because they said there is only one God. So, if you were going to do something to you, maybe instantly, not a problem. Being tortured, difficult. This is another trial. Another trial is if I say, you are going to get affected. Your family is going to get affected. But because of you, I'm going to affect everybody else out there. I'm going to punish the whole town. I'm going to punish all of your tribe. How many more times do you have to think now? You want to see the elderly person oppressed. You want to see the elderly lady oppressed. You want to see children, innocents, oppressed, all because you don't want to give into your faith. The shaitan starts to come into your head. Don't be so selfish. Don't be so arrogant. You think you're the only believer. Why are you worrying only about yourself and your faith? Look at all these people who are going to suffer because of you. Yes? The shaitan gets into your head. So these are some of the trials that the Banu Israel, the ones who did not want to believe in Musa, were afraid of. The other trials, you worry about your reputation. You worry about your money and livelihood. You worry about your health. You worry about your position. When you're young, you take more chances. Why? Because the person who is young, generally, doesn't have so much money. He hasn't become attached to this life yet, because he's still young, he's learning, maybe he doesn't have a family yet, his social ties are still weak, he doesn't worry so much, he has energy to go out and do what he wants, to change and to be dynamic. The elderly person is saying, why am I going to make a big deal and change things? I only have to live a few more years. Let me maintain stability. I have a mortgage to pay, I have my children to send to school and pay their tuition fees. I have a family to feed somewhere else. I have bills to pay. Let someone else become dynamic. Let me just maintain stability. In the revolution of Imam Hussein, you don't see that at all. Habib ibn Mudahar, when he went out into battle, the narrations say that his hair, his eyebrows used to come down on his face. That is how old he was. Over 80 years old. One of the other companions had with him 2 items. People looked and thought that they were both swords. In fact, one was a sword, one was a walking stick. So the elderly people at this time said, this is what I'm looking for. Finally, the opportunity to gain Jannah with Imam Hussein, Shahada. Forget my family, my children, my reputation, my money, my job, my bank job, my shop, my mortgage. Forget all this. I go with Imam Hussein. And you also see the other side of the spectrum. You see Al-Qasim, for example, Ibn Imam Al-Hassan. He says, uncle, please, you let everybody else go from the Banu Hashim. Why do you exclude me? Is it because I look young? Wait a minute. He goes back in. He wears the helmet of his father, Imam Al-Hassan. His mother decides to bulk up his clothes so that when he comes to Imam Hussein, he looks bigger than he is. And he says, now will you let me go? And Imam Hussein begins to cry. He says, your father entrusted you to me. But at Karbala, we see everyone represented, all ages, everybody. The young ones, middle-aged, elderly, brothers, sisters, men, women, everybody is represented. So this is also some of the things that the Banu Israel were afraid of. That we will lose our reputation, if we join Musa alayhi salam, we believe in him, we'll lose our jobs, we'll lose our money. Why do we want to get into this? Let the revolution be formed by someone else. So this was part of the reason as well. Also, because Fir'aun, وَإِنَّ فِرْعَوْنَ لَعَالٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَإِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. Because Fir'aun is somebody who is extremely arrogant and deadly. He's willing to do anything. He cares not for people. And he looks to corrupt people. In order to make you leave your faith, he will do anything. He does not care to kill the babies, the young children, kill the women. The Banu Israel suffered greatly. And they saw in front of them, not somebody told them, they saw in front of them their mothers being attacked, their sisters, their wives, their infant children taken away. And Fir'aun did not feel an ounce of mercy towards them. And so because of this, the majority of the Banu Israel did not follow Musa alayhi salam. They were afraid of the trials, and they were afraid of what Fir'aun would do to them physically. He was willing to kill them. He was willing to kill them and their families. He would not stop. And so because of this, the mission of Musa alayhi salam was only supported by few. The majority of people that he came to save, the majority of people that he came to preach to, that were in need of him saving them, that were crying out for a savior, did not follow him. This is exactly the situation with the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Exactly the same situation with the Holy Prophet, and exactly the same situation with Imam Hussein. At the end of the day, the 30,000 letters that came, we look at the narrations, they say 72 died with him, 100 died, not more than this. So from this 30,000, only a few people were fortunate enough to be victorious, like the people of Musa alayhi salam. Now at this point there is a misconception that needs to be addressed. A young brother asked me a couple of days ago about this. Were the people of Kufa Shia, number one? And did the Shia kill Imam Hussein? This is of course what we hear in the media from, unfortunately, some of our Muslim brothers out there. They say, you killed Imam Hussein, and then you cry over him. Just like some of the people that were involved in the crucifixion of Isa alayhi salam, and then they begin to cry and weep for their sins. Is this applying to us, or is this the truth? Historically, let's look at it. Number one, I urge all the brothers inshallah to look at some of the history works. Tarikh al-Tabari is a good not neutral, but it's a good starting point. You have to watch out for some of the points Tabari makes and some of the things he leaves out, but it's a good starting point. Tarikh al-Tabari, when we look at the history of Kufa, it says Kufa was founded by the second Khalifa. So he founded it when he was leading the Muslim armies against the other nations, the Persians and the Byzantines. He used that spot to make a garrison for the soldiers. This is where they would camp. Eventually, it became into a small town and became later Kufa city. So number one, the Shia did not live there, nor did they found it, nor was Amir al-Mu'mineen involved with it to start with. That's number one. Number two, when Amir al-Mu'mineen entered Kufa, so when he finally, the people decided, yes, we're going to choose Ali ibn Abi Talib to be our leader. We've seen what the others will do, and we now understand why it should be Amir al-Mu'mineen. Even though he refused to accept the Khilafah, they pushed and pushed until he accepted. When he decided to go to Kufa, Kufa was a strategic position. It was in the middle between Khurasan, the Persian areas, and Sham, the Syrian areas, and Egypt, and Hijaz. It was a good central location. And being in Medina means he was too far away from the Muslim lands, and Islam was expanding. More and more Muslims were coming from other parts of the world. And so the Holy Imam moved to Kufa. The first day that he entered the mosque of Kufa, it was the month of Ramadan, he saw in there the majority of people praying Taraweeh in Jama'ah. So he went in and he said, what is this? This is a bid'ah. Wallah, I was with the Holy Prophet and he said, you pray these as nawafil. You do not pray these in Jama'ah. This is a bid'ah. I will forbid this. The cries came out, you have left the sunnah of the shaykhain. You are going against the sunnah. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I'm going against the sunnah. I know it's better than you do. And he was forced at that time by the people to allow some of them to pray it in that way. So that means that city was full of people who did not support Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is a historical record, brothers. This is point number two. Point number three. When, let's suppose the 30,000 people were all truthful in their letters, all of them supported Imam Hussein. When Umar ibn Sa'ad is commanded to go and fight Imam Hussein, when Yazid writes to Ibn Ziyad and says, go and do whatever you can to Imam Hussein. And Ibn Ziyad, we know how full of hatred he is towards the Ahl-Bayt. When he sends an army, the minimum, the narration says 30,000. Some of the narrations say 70,000. You send an army of 30,000. Cavalry, archers, foot soldiers, some of them experienced soldiers, spears, weapons, supplies. You send them out, yes, to Imam Hussein. And Imam Hussein, you know who he is, the grandson of the Prophet. You know he is the Imam of the Shia. Would you send an army full of Shias to the Shia Imam and expect them to kill him? This is tactical error. Nobody would do this. Because you know, as soon as he starts speaking, these 30,000 will join him right away. Now he has an army of 30,000. You have gifted him an army. Yes? It makes no sense to send an army of Shia against the Shia Imam. Doesn't make any sense. You send an army who do not recognize that person, who do not know who he is, who do not care who he is, who don't care who his mother is, his father is, his grandfather. They don't care what he is preaching. They might not even understand the language, as was the case in Karbala. Some of the men in the battle did not even understand what Imam Hussein was saying. Some of them were not even Muslim. They were just sent in the army because of that purpose, because they would not know who Hussein ibn Fatima is. They would not know who Hussein ibn Ali is. And so this is the third point. that Kufa was neither full of Shia, the Shia were minority there. Number two, that the Imam was not killed by his Shia. He was killed by supporters of Bani Sufyan. He says this in his khutbah before he begins the battle, or before the battle starts. He says, Ya Shi'at Bani Sufyan. O Shia, O supporters of the family of Abu Sufyan. The Imam makes this very clear to us, that not one of you is one of our Shia. Otherwise he would have addressed them, O our companions, O our supporters, O our brothers, O our Shia, O those like the Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says about the Khawarij and Nahrawan. He says, Akhwatana baghu alayna. Our brothers turn against us, unfortunately. The Imam does not say that. He says, Ya Shi'at Bani Sufyan. The Shia, the supporters of Abu Sufyan and his family of Abu Sufyan. Those are the people that are fighting us and killing us. Because the Imam recognizes each one of them. He says, Shimr, haven't I seen you before in Kufa? He sees some of Amr ibn Sa'ad. He says, don't I know you and your father and your family? Don't we come from Mecca together? But you are not one of our supporters. You support Abu Sufyan. So this misconception that Kufa full of Shia, that the Shia killed Imam Hussein, that the Shia are treacherous, that Kufans are treacherous, brothers, all misconceptions. The Kufans are noble people. The Shia did not kill Imam Hussein, and Imam Hussein was not betrayed by the Shia. Imam Hussein was murdered by Yazid. Very simple. Do not forget this fact. Yazid murdered Imam Hussein. And don't let anyone say it is tribal, that Banu Umayyah, so Umayyah, Yazid's great-grandfather, and Hashim, Imam Hussein's great-great-grandfather, they hated each other, and there was a friction between them, a rivalry, and then their sons, one hated the other, and eventually this battle of Karbala is tribal. No such thing. Not tribal at all. One is haq, one is batil. One is following Allah, following Sharia, following the Sunnah. One is trying to destroy the Sunnah, destroy the Sharia. So the battle is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not for power, nor is it for name, nor is it for prestige, nor is it tribal, nor is it for revenge, for anything like that. Even though Yazid's language is language of revenge. What does he say when he sees the head of Imam Hussein in Damascus? He says, لَيْتَ أَشْيَاخِي بِبَدْرٍ رَأَوْ جَزَعَ الْخَزْرَجِ مِنْ أَسَلِ الْوَهَلِ لَأَهَلُّوا وَاسْتَهَلُّوا وَقَالُوا يَزِيد لَا تَشَلْ. They would have said, I wish my forefathers, my ancestors in Badr, look at what he says. I wish my ancestors in Badr, he means the ones that were killed by the Muslims. I wish my ancestors in Badr would see what I have done to their enemies. They would have clapped and said, well done Yazid, may your hand be always strong. This is kufr. This is a statement of kufr, of disbelief. He's saying, I wish the people in Badr had seen what I did to the family of the Prophet. I've taken revenge for them. This is the language used by Yazid. What does the language of Imam Hussein say? أنا الحسين بن علي آليت أن لا أنثني أحمي عيالات أبي أمضي على دين النبي والله إني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما إنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي لا أريد أن إلا آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. Wallah, I have come out not to cause mischief or corruption or to take power or to misguide you. I have come only to make sure that you follow the sunnah of the Holy Prophet. Because unfortunately people have started to change the sunnah. Someone started to pray Fajr 4 rak'ah. Someone says you don't need to go to Hajj this year. Someone has started taking taxes, additional taxes out of nowhere, and so on and so forth. So the Imam says, I have come out to make sure you follow the correct path. In order to be sure that the revolution is ready to start, he sends Muslim ibn Aqil, his cousin. He says, my cousin, we've seen these letters. 30,000 arrived in Mecca. I want you to go and find out if these people are truthful. Muslim, after a difficult journey through the desert, they lose their way, they almost die of thirst. He arrives lonely in Kufa. Immediately he goes to the house of Hani and the house of Al-Mukhtar and begins to form a committee, a group of people that will start the revolution. Seeing that yes, the people are truthful, yes, the revolution is ready, the city of Kufa is calm, he writes a letter to Imam al-Hussein, join us as soon as possible. The Imam leaves Mecca, makes his way towards Kufa. One of the people that writes to Yazid is Umar ibn Sa'ad. Him and Shimr ibn Joshan write a letter They say to Yazid, Ya Yazid, if you care about Kufa, send a harsh governor. The one you have at the moment is weak, and Nu'man ibn Bashir, he's weak. And Al-Hussein has sent his cousin, and he's coming to the city. If he enters and starts to raise an army, you will never defeat him. So that shows these two people, they're the leaders of the army. They were supporters of Yazid, they were not Shia. Yazid reads the letter, speaks to his secretary, who is a non-Muslim man. His name is Sirjon, he was secretary of Muawiyah. He says to him, what shall I do? He says, if Muawiyah was alive today, he would send Ibn Ziyad, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, because he knows no limits. He will do whatever he can to make sure the state is firm. Yazid, who had a difference with Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he did not get on well with him, agreed to this. He knew the situation required seriousness. He wrote to Ibn Ziyad, leave now, go towards Kufa. Very simple message. Go and stop Muslim. Ibn Ziyad receives the message, immediately mounts his horse with his guards, races towards Kufa, does not stop. Every person that he leaves with, the narration say between 200 and 300 men, every one of his men falls and dies out of exhaustion. He does not stop. His own mission is to get into Kufa, find Muslim, kill Muslim. His men die on the travel. He enters Kufa, he decides, now he's alone, he doesn't have men with him. What is he going to do? If someone finds out he's the son of Marjana, he's the son of Ibn Ziyad, they will kill him. So he decides to tie his turban in a special way, cover his face. The people thought that he was Imam Hussein. So whenever he came past somebody, someone would say, Assalamu alaikum ibn Rasulillah. They thought he was Al-Hussein, until he made his way to the governor's mansion, and the governor cried out, go away, Ya Hussein. He said, Wayhak, oh you fool, open the door. And they heard immediately, this is the voice of Ibn Marjana, this is the voice of Ibn Ziyad. What is he going to do now? And then he begins his campaign of terror. First thing he tells the people, he makes a speech, he gathers everyone. He says, do you know how many of you are here? 50,000, 80,000? There is 100,000 man army marching from Sham. The army that we sent to Safin is coming to get you now. They won't know anything. If you're innocent or not, they will kill. That is their job. So you are in trouble. This is the first thing he does. He terrorizes them and lies to them. Number two, he says, Hussein is not coming. Only Muslim has been sent here. Hussein is not coming. He's going to be stopped and killed. So he will be without a leader. Number three, he says, you have given allegiance to Muawiyah. Muawiyah appointed Yazid. You guys are traitors. You are betraying Islam now. Some of the simple-minded people began to fall for these lies and tricks. And so the group that's Muslim and Aqeel reduced in number. Muslim saw that the revolution needs to happen faster than planned. So they agreed a particular time and date. Now the plans were being changed because Ibn Ziyad had arrived. And so they decided to come out earlier than they were supposed to. Some of them knew, some of them did not, some of them had weapons, some did not. And Hadi ibn Urwa was taken and arrested. Hadi ibn Urwa was executed. This was a shock. They weren't expecting that. At this point in time, when Muslim Aqeel decides to start his revolution, it is the time of Salah. He gathers the men, he enters the mosque with a few thousand men, he goes into Salat al-Maghrib wal-Isha. He performs Maghrib, performs Isha, looks behind him a few men, he makes his way to the gate of the mosque, he looks around, there is nobody. Nobody left to support him. He starts wandering in the streets of Kufa. He's a foreigner, he's only been there a few days, he does not know where, and his supporter, Hani ibn Urwa, is executed. Al-Mukhtar, his second supporter, is in prison, and they are looking for him. There is a reward out for Muslim ibn Aqeel. He is looking where to find his way. Where shall I go? Where shall I take refuge? Where shall I take shelter? Aimlessly wandering through the streets, he decides when he is tired to take a rest. He sits at the doorsteps of a house. After a few minutes, a woman comes out. She says, oh man, why are you sitting at my house? Go somewhere else. This doesn't look so good. He says, please, oh woman, I need some water. She gives him water. He says, thanks. He sits a bit longer. She comes out. She says, didn't I tell you to leave? I do not give you permission to sit here. When Muslim hears this, he says, okay. Now you need to know who I am. I am Muslim ibn Aqeel. I am the cousin of the Imam. I am the messenger of the city. He says, you are Muslim? Wallah, this is the best guest that I can have. Please enter. He says, I am lonely. These people called us out. They wrote to us letters. They asked to join us. I came to them and they have betrayed me now. These people have turned against me. Ibn Ziyad is asking people to find me and kill me. What shall I do, woman? She says, remain here in my house. and then maybe tomorrow, the next day, we will find a way to get you out of this city. He says, then give me some water to do wudu, for this night is a night of prayer and ibadah. I wish to do my salah. Muslim al-Aqid spends the rest of his night as salah, and the woman is watching him, seeing if he needs anything. Her son arrives, he looks at his mother keeps going, coming back between the house. He says, what is up? What is the situation today? Tell me. She makes him give an oath that he won't tell anyone. She says, Muslim al-Aqid is in our house. He takes the information, goes to Ibn Ziyad, running to Ibn Ziyad. He says, give me the reward. I have found Muslim for you. He's in the house, he's trapped. Come and get him. Ibn Ziyad sends 2 battalions. A battalion is 200 men. So he sends 400 men to Muslim al-Aqid. They begin to shout outside the house, come out, we will take you as a prisoner. He says, me prisoner? No, you will not take me prisoner. He comes out fighting. He pushes them away from the house. He pushes them back towards the alleys. He destroys half the first battalion. The second battalion becomes cowards. They write a message back to Ibn Ziyad saying, send reinforcements. He says, Ajib, I sent 200 men for one person and you want reinforcements? They write back saying, do you know who you sent us to? You didn't send us to one of the merchants, the traders, one of the lowly people out in the desert. You sent us to the family of Abu Talib. These people equal, each one of them equals 1,000. Send us reinforcements or all of us will be killed. So they decide to send reinforcements, and then they lay a trap. They push Muslim back towards this trap until he falls in it. They shoot him with arrows, they throw stones at him. Muslim is taken as prisoner. He is upset. What is he upset, brothers and sisters, about? He's not upset about himself. The narrations say he begins to cry. He's not crying for himself. He's upset that Imam Hussein is making his way. He's upset that what is going to happen to him will happen 10 times worse to Imam Hussein. He's upset that Zainab will see what will happen. He's upset that Hamida, that Sakina will see what will happen. This is what is making Muslim cry. He's taken to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad insults him. Eventually Ibn Ziyad says, now we will execute you. Take him to the rooftops. He's taken to the rooftops. He says, give me a minute. Let me turn my face. He turns towards the direction of Mecca where Imam Hussein is coming from. He cries out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. It is said in the narrations that Imam Hussein stands up and immediately cries, Wa alayka as-salam ya ibn al-am. My cousin, wa alayka as-salam. He begins to cry. He feels something is happening to Muslim. Muslim is put forward and they execute him. They throw his body from the rooftops and they drag his body through the streets. Imam Hussein a few days later receives the news. He puts, the narrations say, he puts his head on his knees and begins to cry as if someone has lost their mother just now. The family begin to look at him. Ya Aba Abdullah, something wrong. Imam Hussein calls Zainab. He says, bring me Hamida. Hamida is the daughter of Muslim. She's a few years old. He says, bring me Hamida. They bring Hamida next to him. Imam begins to rub over her head. He begins to kiss her. He hugs her tightly. She says, my uncle, I can see what you are doing to me. We usually see these when someone deals with orphans. Has something happened to my father? Where is my father gone? He says, Addamallah lak al-aj. Your father has become the first shaheed of this journey. But I am your father now. My daughters are your sisters. She says, but how nice is it for a father to call his daughter's name? And I will never hear my father calling my name again. And Imam Hussein says, do not worry. Though you have lost your father now, my daughters will also lose their father. The rest of these girls will also lose their father. Oh Hamida, yes, your father is a martyr, but in a few days you will see exactly what happens to this martyr. You will see the heads being cut off. You will see the horses trampling on their chests. You will see the bodies being stripped naked. You will see the sun beating on them. You will see the arrows in the heart. You will see the arrows in the eye. You will see the left and the right arms of Abu al-Fadl Abbas. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun wal 'aqibatu lil muttaqin. Brothers, inshallah we keep every night remembering people in dua. Again, some more brothers and sisters wrote saying that they need your dua, their health needs to improve. Inshallah we will recite Amman yujib al-muftar إذا دعا ويكشف السوء 5 times together inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء يا الله يا الله بحق محمد وآل محمد اعطنا الصحة والعافية واغفر لنا ذنوبنا وثبتنا على دينك يا Allah. Your brothers and sisters that need your dua, in the narrations it say the fastest way to get your prayer answered is to pray for your brothers and sisters. If you want your prayers to get answered every night, pray for someone else. Also, inshallah, don't forget the dead ones from our community. I'm sure there are people here that used to come to the center, used to sit next to you, our friends, our companions, our cousins, our aunts, our uncles, our brothers, sisters, people that used to sit here just like us. They have passed away now. They're in need of your dua. If you remember them, you bring happiness to them. If you remember them with a dua, that makes their life so much happier, that somebody remembered them. So inshallah, we do not forget the people, the mu'mineen that have passed away from this community, and as a thawab, as a hadiyah to their souls, we will recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Before that, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.